Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today's first panel is about sellouts, the devaluing of American citizenship. Please welcome our panelists, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, former U.S. Ambassador to Mexico Chris Landau, Arizona Representative Paul Gosar, and moderated by ACU Foundation's Mercedes Schlapp.
Good morning, CPAC. So where are we, day 2 now of CPAC? You all having a great time? How wonderful was Rick Grenell? I don't know, I think he'd make a great governor of California. What do you think? Well, I have an impressive guest joining us today. We really wanted to talk about something that is important to all of us, which is valuing our American citizenship. The fact that, I know as a daughter of immigrants, my father came from Cuba, my mother also came from Cuba. They fled political persecution, and they came legally to our country, and we treasure that. We treasure those who get in line, follow the process to be able to come and live here in America and seek that opportunity. But in certain states, like Arizona, like Texas, we find that there is chaos at the border, especially now as we see a new administration come in and on a bullhorn basically say, come on in, it's an open border system. And so what we want to address today is why it's so important that we stand for legal immigration, that we stand for fixing our immigration system, something that I think politicians have failed for way too long. So I'd like to start with Congressman Gosar. Thank you for being here today.
Mercedes.
And I know there was a big, actually, I know we're talking immigration, but there was a big ruling as well.
Absolutely, out in Arizona. But before I get to that, I want to tell you, I denounce when we talk about white racism. That's not appropriate. I believe in a strong immigration system, but a legal immigration system. And we have to be very pointed in basically looking throughout the federal government for those programs that are not authorized by Congress and don't have checks and balances. We had a great ruling in Arizona. As many of you know, there were some indices of fraud that were out in Arizona. And yesterday, a federal district court judge allowed the state legislature, who has supremacy over the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, to access the Dominion machines and the ballots.
I think one of the tweets you had put out as well was the fact that you're going to oppose these American last policies, right? You're talking about not supporting criminals over our citizens, gangs, over our families. The criminals are really running this process at the border.
Oh, absolutely. When you start to look at catch and release that's going on right now in Arizona, in the small little town of Yuma, where if you're having a salad right now, there's about a 95% chance it came from that area. And what they're doing is they're releasing 50 undocumented aliens into the streets and hoping they'll come back for their court appearance, but over 99% of them do not do that.
And that's, explain catch and release. There's always this question that people don't understand what catch and release is. President Trump stopped catch and release under his administration. Walk us through a little bit of what that means and what the Biden administration did to now allow catch and release to happen.
So during the Trump administration, so many people were coming to the border for asylum. And so the adjudication, it's hard to figure out what's going on, as well as with children. And so what the Trump administration did is held those individuals in Mexico while their case was being looked at and adjudicated, so that there was more compliance. Most people don't realize that the asylum seekers, most of them do not qualify under those statutes. And the Biden administration actually reversed that, and now they're capturing the undocumented and they're releasing them into the interior or into wherever they want to go. So it puts a huge resource strain on the counties, the sheriffs there, and the state.
Wonderful. One of the things I think we were talking about yesterday, Ambassador Landau. Ambassador Landau is our former U.S. ambassador to Mexico, was front and center in dealing with working with Mexicans on the border crisis. And what did you find in working with Mexico, and especially explaining the mitigation protection protocol that President Trump put in place when he was president?
Absolutely, Mercy. It's one of the things that President Trump doesn't get enough credit for, is that our administration worked really closely with Mexico to stop and to disincentivize these immigrant flows, because these out-of-control caravans that we were seeing were in violation of U.S. law and also of Mexican law. And what drives me bananas is that the narrative in this country is that President Trump, his immigration policies were mean to the immigrant people. To the contrary, the people who are really cruel in this are the people who are luring poor people from all over the world to the United States, saying, if you get here, we'll give you free education, we'll give you free health care, we'll give you a new life. And these people then come, they have to live in the shadows in this country, and so it's not in our interest or in Mexico's interest to do that. We had great cooperation with Mexico to try to stop and reduce these flows, and I'm afraid that's been lost already in just over a month.
And we were having this discussion that when President Trump made those comments about we're going to put tariffs on Mexico and really put a bit of that economic squeeze for Mexico to come back and help us with the border crisis and providing security resources in helping to stop these caravans, stop the flows, of illegal immigrants, we found that it worked. It's when the Mexicans came to the table. And they had a very, I mean, President Trump had a very good relationship with President Obrador in Mexico.
They had a great relationship, and again, this helps protect the migrants themselves. And one thing, Mercy, that the media in this country misses out on is that a lot of times these people themselves are victims. This is a big business, smuggling people into this country, human trafficking. That's never reported that way, but these people are often desperately poor. They spend whatever savings they have to try to get to the United States, and then they're often crammed into tractor trailers. As many as 230 people have been found in tractor trailers that are sometimes just abandoned by the side of the road in Mexico. I mean, the people who are encouraging illegal immigration are encouraging a humanitarian crisis. It's the most perverse thing ever that they are regarded as great champions of human dignity. It's completely the opposite.
Yeah, and it's the drug cartels and the human traffickers who are the ones profiting off these families.
Absolutely.
Attorney General Paxton, it's great to have you here as well. Okay, who's from Texas? Okay, we have a fan club. Let me ask you, Biden, first few days of the administration, obviously he made a decision to sign record numbers of executive orders, right? Insane. Well, one of the things he focused on was basically telling Department of Homeland Security, let's halt deportations. What actions did Texas take immediately?
So within 3 days of him being in office, we filed a lawsuit, which we do in Texas against presidents who go beyond their constitutional authority. And we made the argument, we had three arguments. One is that we had an agreement with Homeland Security that if they made major changes to immigration, that they would give us time to adjust to it. They completely ignored that agreement. Second, they violated federal law because it's not his job to change federal law, what Congress has passed. His job is to implement federal law and to execute on it. So we sued him over the fact that he's not doing his job. And third, that his constitutional role is not to make new law. That was our lawsuit. We filed for a temporary injunction, which we received very quickly. And just this week, we got a permanent injunction, which means that we've stopped his illegal action until we get to trial.
Just a follow-up to that question. So what does it mean when we're saying we can't halt these deportations? What's the impact that it's having, the strain that it's putting on the resources in Texas and across the country?
You know, that's such a great question because the media doesn't really focus on that. But as a border state, as Congressman knows, it has a tremendous impact. First of all, we've been dealing with this healthcare crisis and this transmission of COVID, and suddenly that doesn't matter. We don't know the health status of these people coming across the border. So we've had all these restrictions in our country, but there's no restriction now on the border. Additionally, we've already talked about it. Human trafficking, transnational crime. We're just opening the door to all that, which creates tremendous risk for my citizens and really the citizens of this entire country. And then just the additional cost that we have to incur that the federal government doesn't step in and help us with. Education, law enforcement, healthcare, and other costs. You know, it's just ignored by the media and it's ignored by Biden as he opens the border and tells people to come on in.
Let me ask you, Congressman Gosar. So I think one of the things that we're seeing even early on with the Biden administration is that they're moving forward with their version of immigration reform legislation. I can tell you, being on the other side with President Trump, we tried several times to work and get things done in terms of immigration reform, including securing the border, which was a huge priority, obviously, for the president. So where will this legislation go? Obviously, they have the support from the Democrats are going to push this forward. What does this mean in terms of what they would consider fixing a broken immigration system?
Well, I don't think they're fixing it in any way, shape, or form. They're blowing it up is what they're doing. And that's what's wrong about that. That's why I made the comment I said earlier. We need to look at programs like OPT, where we're actually, it was never condoned by Congress, that we incentivize these big techs that are running all over us in our freedom of speech and assembly, where they get workers that don't have to pay FICA withholding tax. You know, so once again, we see the benefit being given to foreign aspects over our citizens, and that devalues the citizen. So from that standpoint, they're here to blow it up. They need victims. We're about empowering people, and that's where they're going with this. And it's sad to say that they don't understand it, but in some ways they do. They want to blow up the system because they think that the system that is created is totally unfair.
And you know, one of the things that President Biden has done, one of the first things he did as well, was stop the funding at the border wall.
Yep.
Something that we worked really hard to do in the Trump administration, ensure that we were building the wall. I know that was something that was a priority for the president. Do walls work?
Well, they absolutely do. Ask Nancy Pelosi about that.
So, Ambassador, again, going back to the border issue, talking about how do you think that the Biden administration will perform in terms of working with these Latin American countries, including Mexico?
Well, I'm very worried about the signs that we've seen so far. President Trump had agreements with a lot of Central American countries to try to limit this, with a great cooperation with Mexico. And let's just remember, folks, we're still in a pandemic here. I mean, the idea that you were going to incentivize people to be coming into our country illegally during a pandemic is just beyond the pale. I don't understand why the American people aren't more up in arms about this. You know, it's not as if these people are socially distancing on their way through Mexico. And again, you know, a lot of times I think it's important to understand that these people are being preyed on. They're being lured here by coyotes and cartels who are telling them, you can have a better life. Just pay up, pay, you know, $10,000, scrape together your savings. And then, you know, the violence against these people in Mexico is horrifying. The levels of rape on these journeys, the thought that anybody in this country would be incentivizing and luring people to try to make this very dangerous journey is abhorrent. So I think as a country, we should do everything we can to discourage that and encourage people to follow our laws, which very clearly set forth a process to come here legally if you want to come here. What's really crazy is these people, of course, are jumping in line ahead of the people who are waiting their turn, legal immigrants. We're a country of immigrants. My parents are immigrants, probably everybody in this room. But there's a way to do it, and that's what is so frustrating, is that we are incentivizing people to skirt the very system that our own laws provide. It's maddening.
Attorney General, in terms of the asylum system, what does that also mean? I mean, obviously, we're seeing President Biden make changes in that arena as well. What would be the impact on these states?
Well, it's tremendous. I do want to answer your wall question, too. We have a border wall partly along where El Paso is. Before that occurred, El Paso was one of the highest crime cities in America. When they put that up, it actually made them one of the more safe cities. So we know they work. As far as asylum, we've been a country that has allowed people to come here to escape persecution for a long time. And I think that is something great about our country, to offer freedom to people that are suffering. But everybody has been taught now by immigration lawyers that you claim asylum, and what it lets you do is come in and stay in the country under the Biden administration. You stay here, and then you get a hearing set. And the problem is the hearing may be years later, and you disappear, and most of those people don't even show up for their hearing. And so it's a loophole that unfortunately sort of hurts the people that are legitimately coming here for asylum, and we need to find a way to fix that because it's not working anymore.
Congressman, let me ask you about MS-13 gang members. You hear these tragic stories. I know even, and what I find interesting is that with the crime, what they've done. I know that President Trump spent a lot of time combating MS-13, the crime associated with these gang members. They have huge networks with several of these Latin American countries, in these Latin American countries. What's your concern in terms of how we stop this the crime from happening here, especially from illegal immigrants, and that impacts so many of these communities? It impacts the Latino community, the African American communities.
Well, we see the lawlessness from the Democrats already. And so then you're bringing and enticing those that defy the law already if it was enforced. So you get a supercell, and that they feel that they're empowered to be able to do their will against innocent people. And that's what's really sad, is that the rule of law is for everybody, not anybody to be above it. And these are ruthless people that actually look at death being an entrance into a gang. And there's been machete mutilations on the East Coast and the West Coast. And our citizens fear for their lives because it is all about what the MS-13 or the gangs and the cartels want to do. It's not about you.
The other thing is Biden talks about, or I would say you've seen many of the Democrats talk about the abolish ICE component. How impactful, how would that hurt our states?
Well, the resources, first of all, when ICE is not able to do their job, then that comes down to the county and the state level. I talked about the catch and release. They're releasing over 50 people, undocumented people, into the Yuma area. Well, that puts a notification and a hardship on the sheriff's office there as well as the state. And those are not resources that they actually have. But what you're also seeing is states like Texas that are utilizing the 10th Amendment to actually force the narrative. Use the courts, be smart, and then also make sure that you're empowered. I think that's a big key component.
Ambassador, I think you've worked so hard, and with Mexico, working with these Latin American countries as well. What do you think they are thinking in their minds right now, and how they're going to deal with caravans coming, the fact that they feel that there's this open border policy in the United States?
Well, it creates a huge problem for them, too. I mean, Mexico doesn't want to be the doormat for the United States, for all these people from all over the world. I mean, this is something that I think a lot of people don't realize here in the States or in Mexico even, that a lot of this illegal migration is coming from all corners of the globe. I mean, when I was ambassador to Mexico, there would be people in Mexico from Bangladesh, Congo, Haiti. We're not just talking about Mexico and Guatemala here. When it becomes a magnet now with plane travel, you get people from all over. There are people who fly into Brazil and then walk up there. So the effect is very destabilizing on these countries. During a pandemic, they don't want people just crossing their borders in mass numbers through a disorganized process, particularly. So I think they are very concerned about what the ripple effects on them could be of these Biden administration policies.
And Attorney General, you've dealt with sanctuary cities in terms of you've seen what these other states have done. How's Texas handled the sanctuary city policy in terms of many of these mayors deciding we're going to make this happen and this is just the way we're going to deal with it? But what are the negative impacts of that?
So our state, the legislature wisely passed sanctuary city laws. So if they are violating federal law, not cooperating with customs and immigration, then they could potentially be fined and be removed from office. And so we've already filed a lawsuit against the city of San Antonio.
Right.
And the sheriff who released illegals without cooperating with ICE. So that has been a very effective tool for us to stop, and it's pretty much shut that down in Texas.
So final thoughts. Now we're going to go into our final thoughts here. Congressman, I'll start with you.
Yeah, as was said earlier, we're a country of immigrants, but it was legal application. And too much what we've seen is no application to that rule of law, that standing. That's what made us great. That's what made us special, is that we were all treated under that same law. And I think we're at a crisis point. But I will also tell you, I think it's a point where we can be involved and we can be the solution instead of the problem. Where there's greatest chaos is the greatest opportunity for change.
Thank you. Ambassador?
I just think, as Americans, we need to go back to Civics 101. Under our Constitution, the president's job is to execute the laws. See, the president is the chief executive. The president doesn't get to make the laws. The president doesn't get to pick and choose which laws are going to pick. No, all the laws, all the laws.
All right, Attorney General, I don't know how you're going to beat that,
It's
but you can
hard to
try.
follow that. You nailed it. That's exactly right. I mean, immigration is a huge issue. But fundamentally, if we have a president that is overstepping his constitutional role, we don't have a constitutional government anymore. And so that's what we need to really focus on.
Yeah.
Well, we know one thing, is that Biden is going to sell us out. He has no interest in truly fixing this immigration system. It's for him open borders and continuing to pursue this radical immigration policy. It's a broken system. It's unfortunate that so many people have suffered in the process. And at the end of the day, we want to keep supporting legal immigration. And we want to thank all of you for joining us in this wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.